The golf course, we want to make sure that we don't arrive there before 7 o'clock. And the reason for that is that by 7 o'clock, a lot of their dinner people will be moving out of the parking lot and we'll actually have a place to park. So if you can, please try to not come until 7. If it is possible to pay in cash, they would prefer that. I think they're going to have credit card availability, but it's going to be a little more difficult, but they will try to do it. But again, if you have cash, what we're going to do is when you get there, there's probably going to be a cashier. If you have cash to hand them, they're going to give you an armband and you're set to go. We're going to try to do that this year so that once we get started, they don't have to come around the tables to collect money and stuff. So, and again, dinner's around 7:30. It might even be a little bit later than that. Tomorrow morning at Cafe 101, we are planning to be there. They're going to reserve at least 20 seats inside, but we need to be there around 8 o'clock. And tomorrow, as far as the Carlisle events goes, they used to have at like 2:30 or 3 o'clock. They used to have an official awards presentation. I think they finally learned that they aren't going to get people to stay until 3 o'clock to find out whether they won something or not. So they're going to post at 9 a.m. the winners. And I may be able to try to find out without us being here if any of you, I should say, have won anything. I can tell you that although we had a really good turnout yesterday, they did post on their Facebook page last night the Elite Award winners, and there were no CITROENS that got the Elite Award this year. The Elite Award is given to 10 cars that are here on Friday that are chosen by the employees and management of Carlisle as their 10 favorite cars. And we've won that with it at least once every year since they started it, so I guess we can't be too mad. But tomorrow morning we're going to meet at Cafe 101 in Boiling Springs. It's pay as you go. They have very good breakfast. They have great coffee and a very, very nice venue. If this liquid sunshine goes away, we might even be able to sit outside on the patio, but I'm going to say that's a long shot right now. So the plan is after that, we are going to drive to the AACA Museum in Hershey. It's about a 30-mile drive one way, but that will be the culmination of the events here. So once you are at the Hershey AACA, you can stay there as long as you want, and I would suggest that you just plan on leaving from there for home, unless there's something here specifically that you want to see again. But from experience, I can tell you that by noon or so, the majority of the vendors and stuff are gone. So appreciate you all coming. I just walked down the line and we have a good turnout. We have 25 CITROENS here, so give yourselves a hand. We were expecting a few more than that, and we normally would have, but there are a certain number of people that wait until they see the weather report, and they come at the last minute. But 25 CITROENS compared to those Saabs, and I'm not picking on Saab, but Saab was sold up until just a couple years ago. CITROEN hasn't been in the United States since 1974, was the last cars they officially sold. So the fact that we get 25 is pretty darn good. So anyhow, if anybody has any questions, I'll be doing the next seminar and I'll be glad to answer any questions then. Right now, I don't really think I need to introduce him, but Dave Burnham from Delancey, New York. We all know him as probably the mechanic for CITROENS on the East Coast of the United States, if not for the whole country. Dave is a huge supporter of everybody by what he does, and his knowledge of the cars and of the whole, everything to do with CITROEN is very, very good, and we appreciate him doing a seminar today.
And he's a swell guy.
Thank you very much, Dave.
So I'm going to try to talk without the microphone, but if you can't hear, let me know and we'll
fire it up.
Carlisle at 3, Miss Carlisle at 4.
And hopefully that will stop
Rolling
shortly.
exhaust at 5, burnout at 7.
What I'm going to talk about mostly is the changes that we've seen or in the world of Citroën since the 70s when they were imported here last.
My
So
understanding
it's like
is
40
they
years
still
or
are back
more.
on the track doing drifting.
I started working at Carmichael Citroën in Albany, New York in 1977. So I never officially saw a brand new Citroën on a showroom floor. And at that time, which was like 4 or 5 years after the last imported Citroën.
Lots of great activities still going on throughout the day today. Lots of great food and drinks. Beer gardens open right here by the main stage, so stick around. Great things happening. Import and for
All right, so I got to use this.
Yeah, that's much better.
Jeez. I got like 14 pages here. How am I going to do all this?
Well, we want to see you juggle.
Yeah.
John, we'll turn pages for you. Janet.
I've always wanted to do that for a concert pianist.
Maybe I'll bring. I forgot my piano.
Andrew, come on in under the tent. Make room under the tent.
There's
You
a
guys
few
can get along
chairs over
the
here
side.
too. We can
Come on in,
put that
guys.
stuff under the.
You don't bite too much.
Let me move it in. No, yeah, there's lots of space.
The closer you are, the better you're going to be able to see.
Yeah.
So come on up.
You okay?
I wasn't putting this. All right. Geez.
My blocking.
No, we're good.
All
We're
right,
good.
so, you know, I never officially got to see a new Citroën on the showroom floor. I started working at Carmichael Citroën in 1977 in August, just after I got out of college. At that time, I think we saw about one Citroën a month coming into the shop. And one of the most interesting things at that point for me, because I didn't know much about Citroëns, was the cars that I saw at that time were much, much worse condition than the cars that are here right now. And if you think about that, those cars were only maybe 5 or 6 years old. So that would be the same as like a 2010 Honda, completely wore out, rusted out, junk car. So things have changed in that way a lot. So what we're going to go through next is some of the other things that we've seen change over the years. One of the most notable things that's changed is the values of the cars. Obviously, if you've been paying attention or bought a car recently, the prices are going up. We got some graphs here. Gabrielle helped a lot on this and spent a lot of time researching the prices of cars over the last 10, 20, 30 years. These graphs, as you can see, are pretty flat in the beginning. And then, what is this? This is like 2010, this is 2012, 2016. There's very, very high spikes in the last few years with these cars. I think some of that has to do with the recession or whatever that we went through. You know, people were scared to put their money in the stock market, so they bought a car. They could put their money in a car, they could go out in their garage, they could see the car, they could drive the car. It wasn't going to evaporate like it did in 2008. And these are all accurate prices, sale prices of cars or auction prices. And so like the most official high auction prices that we could find were like 55 grand for the top of the line DS. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't cars that are sold much higher than that. There's a lot higher and there's a lot lower, but we follow these trends up.
These are actually the Haggerty graphs.
The Haggerty graphs.
And I did a lot of research, but I couldn't come up with anything better than what Haggerty had. So
Yeah.
it's from the horse's mouth.
So that's DS21. What do we got next?
SM.
SM. The huge spike in SMs over the last couple of years. You know, they were really totally flat, and then they really spiked high. I mean, in the beginning, they were down around well, top of the line SM was in the 30s, but this last Haggerty point is 103,000, I think, and we know of at least half a dozen cars that were sold between 100,000 and 200,000. I mean, they're really stellar cars, and most of those sales don't get reported often. So, what do we got next? Traction Advance. Oh,
2 CV, sorry.
2 CVs. They were really flat for a long time, and in the last few years they're going up pretty steadily also. That's like 32,500 is the top for a 2 CV. Can you believe that? I mean, that's a third of the price of an SM.
Not mine.
I'm like,
Eric is like,
yeah.
Thank you, Eric.
And it's because of people like Eric and before him David Allen and other people that,
But
you know.
for you, I'll make an exception.
But you can build a new one from scratch for less, can't you?
And then Traction Avance, they've had a much slower rise, but like the highest ones that we could find, or Haggerty has, are like 45,000 bucks, except for cabriolets. And cabriolets in virtually any model are always way higher, except 2 CVs because they're all cabriolets. All right. Another thing that we have found over the years is a change in the customers. You wouldn't believe the difference in the customers now. Often our cars are not driven anymore. And this is a picture of our storage building. And this isn't just in the middle of winter. This is like, it could be in the spring or in the summer. Half the cars in there are owned by customers, are not mine, and they're just sitting there. They don't drive them anymore. So, you know, in the early days, all the cars were used as transportation. People just wanted these cars to get back and forth to work or to do whatever they wanted to do. And the owners were working on their own cars, and it was a very, like in the 80s, it was a really, really bad time to own a Citroën because you couldn't get parts. Most of the new parts were drying up. There weren't too many shops out there working on the cars. Where Brad worked was one of the few that was trying to do a good job and actually restoring cars. So the times when owners would work on their own cars has kind of gone away. So what we see now is most owners don't do their own work, and I gotta follow my script here. In the old days, you know, we could often talk people through problems with their cars. If they had a problem, they'd call us up. We'd try to help them over the phone. That's getting harder and harder because the guys that are buying the cars now, they know where to put the key in and where to put the gas in, and that's about it. And they don't even know what a screwdriver is half the time. But one thing that has changed also in regards to that is the owners have been going more and more towards being historically accurate with their restorations. They aren't worrying as much about just making the car super reliable. The car needs to be historically accurate because that's what's worth money, is making a real excellent restoration. We've seen a higher profile on Citroëns over the years. In the last 10 or 15 years especially, you see an awful lot of write-ups in the magazines like Hemmings and Sports and Exotic and all different magazines that, you know, in the old days they would say there were weird cars, obscure cars that went up and down, or they were cute. But now they're being appreciated for their mechanical creativity. And for being so far outside the box, totally different than anything else here at this show. And that includes all the models of Citroëns that we like and that are mostly on the show field. So you can see that, you know, they really think there's a wow factor with these cars that you don't get with other cars. The other thing is things like the Mentalist. You know, using that really got the word out about D models, and you could probably see a spike in the sales of them and the prices of them when that show started on television. So all these changes over the years, how does it affect the owners of the cars? There's a lot more to consider when you have a car that's going up in value or being really appreciated. We're just the temporary caretaker of the cars. You know, we're not going to use it up, and then it's not going to end up in a junkyard. You're just holding on to it till the next person takes the car over. So you need to think through everything that you do on the car, because it's going to affect the future of these cars and of the, whoever gets the car next. One thing you need to really do is make sure you have your car insured properly, and it's very expensive to fix crash damage on these cars now. Body shops are very expensive, so I recommend that when people are insuring their car, go for the highest agreed value that you can get. Like if you have an SM and you have an agreed value of $10,000 on it, if you happen to have a little teeny weeny rear end collision and you whack both rear tail lights and both bumpers, your car will be totaled. It'll be perfectly drivable, but between brand new tail lights and the bumpers and a little bit of body work, it'll absolutely be totaled. The tail lights right now are over $2,000 a piece if you want new ones, and the bumper parts in the back are all stainless steel. They can be fixed, but if they're bent enough, then they're like $1,000 a piece. That's just to straighten them and polish them up again. So if your car is not insured properly, and I'm talking about any one of them, 2CVs, anything, I would recommend after this you go get on the phone and call your insurance guy and raise it as high as you can get. Often the price to insure your car a little bit higher or a lot higher is not that much compared to the money you'll lose if the car gets whacked. If you're mechanical repairs and body shops right now are very expensive. We have things that used to be easy to do on the cars are not easy anymore. Take for instance, on a 2CV, if you have a problem with your front bumper, it's just a simple thing. It's only held on by a few bolts. Normally in the past it'd take less than an hour to change a front bumper. Nowadays, depending on what quality of bumper you get, it could take 2, 3, 4 hours to put it on and make sure the whole body lines up, and then it all depends on what frame it is you have under the car. There's all kinds of different problems that we encounter, so nothing is straightforward anymore, and it's extremely hard to quote anything anymore. So it's just very difficult now in that respect. Let me get back on track here. And because of that, it's very difficult to quote a whole restoration. Anything that we do can just get blown out of proportion very easily. If a car's been painted 2 or 3 times, you just never know what's under there. All right, next, as the cars go up in value, you definitely need to be careful storing your car. If you want to keep your car in great shape, you need to store it properly, and that means, try not to have the car in sunshine. Try to keep it dry, and try to also keep it, not in a super hot garage, but also try to keep it away from mice. That's a real problem. We see it often. We store a lot of cars, and we don't really have any mice problems, but we can't store them in an environmentally controlled building because it just would cost too much. But if you happen, let me just give a couple examples of what mice damage can do. I think Gabrielle's got a picture here of a mouse nest in the back of a DS rear seat. We see that a lot. we just had a car in the shop that wouldn't start. For the last couple of years, it was very difficult to start. But once we'd prime the carburetor, it would start up and run fine, and we could drive it all week, no problem at all. And then if you let it sit for 3 days, then it wouldn't start again. So we checked all the normal stuff, the fuel pump and the fuel filters and all that. What we ended up finding was, this is on a DS, in the right front corner of the car, in the trap section of the frame, there was a mouse nest. And they chewed a couple of little tiny pinholes through the nylon tube that the fuel goes through. So if the car sat for long enough, the fuel pump would not be able to pick up the fuel from the fuel tank. But if you started the car, you know, priming the carburetor would start fine and run fine, just like nothing ever happened. And the holes were so small, it never leaked either. So normally you would think, oh, there's a hole in the fuel line, it's going to dump fuel out, but it didn't do that. That was kind of challenging to find, and we see that type of stuff all the time with mice damage. They like to chew wires, they like to chew things you would never think they would want to chew.
What do you suggest to prevent that?
For preventing mice, you know, if you can, yeah, cats work. Some people have tried mothballs and that stuff. I don't like that. It smells really bad. We put occasionally dryer fabric sheets in the cars, and that seems to work pretty well, and they smell nice.
I'll tell you what you do. You make a mouse trap. This is an awesome mouse trap. You get a 5-gallon bucket, a pop can, and a piece of wire so it'll spin. Put a piece of wood up, put peanut butter on it, and fill it with water or antifreeze. And get pet safe kind. They'll climb up, they'll jump in the can, they'll flip, go in the water. And seriously, I caught 20 mice last year. Like doing that. You don't have to reset it, you don't have to do anything.
Well, there's lots of ways to kill mice, so thank you for that.
It'll work. It's all over YouTube.
So, you know, as the values of the cars go up, so do some things which are good, you know, like parts. If the cars become valuable, then it's much easier to get parts, because people will often, or shops or businesses will start making parts that were not available over the years. And there's lots and lots of companies doing that now for most all the models. I mean, you can buy a whole complete 2CV out of the catalog now, just build it. You can get an awful lot of DS stuff that you couldn't do before. You know, in regards to Burton, like companies like Burton, they're reconditioning or remaking crankshafts for 2CVs and all kinds of stuff that you couldn't get for many, many years. So that's been a big plus. In our case, over the years, we've tried to make a few parts here and there, and often we can't make a part unless the car is valuable enough. Now, we made these things here, which are for early ID. It's a car that is not worth that much compared to a DS21, and this is just a piece of plastic.
Do accept credit cards.
Do you have any idea how much a mold for that costs? Well, it was $2,500 to make the first one of these. And we did it because we had a customer that needed one and was willing to invest a little bit. But, you know, so we had to sell like 10 of these. No, it was more, yeah, like 10 of them to break even. And then since then we've sold maybe another 10. So if the prices of the cars go up, then people will be willing to make parts that you couldn't normally get and keep them in production. And, you know, it's just much easier. If the car's not worth $3,000, then nobody's going to make a part like that. So it's just an example of what some businesses are doing. Check out the center fold, page 20 and 21. You know, parts prices have changed over the years a lot. When I worked at the CITROEN dealership in Albany in '77, a liter of LHM was almost 20 bucks. It's only $16 now. So it's an unbelievable difference. Back then, people would ask us to put used brake pads in because the new brake pads were so expensive. And we did it a lot because, not all a full set of brake pads would wear out. You'd have just one side wear out or something like that. But, as the volume of the parts goes up, the price often comes down. Choosing where to get parts, we're fortunate, in the U.S. to have people like Brad and a few of the other guys around in the U.S. that are willing to source parts for us. If we can keep working on the cars, then we don't have to spend time on the internet looking around or making phone calls. So it's important to support our USA people like Brad and the other companies in the U.S. doing that. In regards to new old stock parts, often a new old stock part, if you can find one, should be worth way more than a reproduction part. That is assuming it's still a good part. But if it's a 50-year-old part, sometimes you have to really evaluate it to see if it's still going to work. But if it's a trim part or something like that, and a new old stock part will be worth way more than an original, than a reproduction part. Okay. Let's see. In regards to buying a car, lots of things have changed there. And should you buy a restored car or should you restore one yourself? If you have the money, it's always cheaper to buy one that somebody else did because they spent a fortune on it.
Assuming it's been done right. Yeah.
If it's been done right, and you got to be careful with that because there's people out there that are not doing them right. It's also interesting. Like we'll work on any Citroën. If it says Citroën, we'll work on it. But we almost never get to restore 2CVs anymore because, like the ones Eric are selling, are really, really good. And they're made on almost like an assembly line, and we can't compete with anything like that.
But I love reproductions, they're restorations.
Yep. So it's important to know that restoring a car is often way more money than if you could go out and buy one just already done. But they're catching up. If those values that you saw on the graphs keep going up, then eventually we could restore a car and you actually might be able to make money or resell it. But it's almost there now. But on certain cars like SMs and DSs, they're just so labor intensive. It's just unbelievable. All right, so
What's not worth restoring?
yeah, what's not worth restoring? A car like this.
Oh, is that the one from Madagascar?
Yes, this
Yeah.
car was in. We have a lady that worked for the U.S. government or something in Madagascar, and she saw this poor old thing sitting on the side of the road, and she fell in love with it. And because she works for the U.S. government, our tax dollars were, allowed her to import it to the USA for free. We all paid for that. And so they sent it directly to us, and we were just absolutely amazed at how messed up everything was on that car. There was nothing at all worth fixing on the car. There was, even the lug nuts and lug bolts were screwed up. At the same time, it was pretty cool because it was very creative. The fixes that a third world country does with no money, is amazing. And apparently it was drivable up to not too long before she bought the car, but it was absolutely not worth restoring. I told her she should try to put it in a third world museum that shows stuff like that. Or she should put it in in her living room or something like that, because it would have cost you know, double what Eric could sell her a brand new one for. And of course, she didn't want a brand new one. She wanted that one. So it's just sitting in our storage barn. And it probably will forever. So.
Maybe it should go to Cuba.
Yep.
Third world country like France.
What a Chevy engine.
But on the other hand, like a CITROEN convertible, you know, this is the one, the Hellman car that we did over the last 3 or 4 years. You know, it's completely rotted out from one end to the other. That car is going to have a lot of money in it. It's actually finished now. But if they were to put it up for auction, they probably would make a little money on it. And the amount of money that they spend on it is just overwhelmingly unbelievable. Even for me.
Can you give a ballpark? I mean, like 200,000 or more or less?
That's about it.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe a little more.
Yeah, but once again, where are you going to go get another one?
Yep, you can. And you know, when you have a history like that car had, where he bought it in 1980 for $600, and he just stored it all these years, and he didn't have a pot to piss in, and now he does. You know, it's a cool story, so it makes a lot of sense.
Well,
remember you
probably
estimated.
restored CITROENS are now going between the 200,000 euro
Yeah.
range, and I cannot find them. Yeah, the moment they come up for sale, they're sold.
There's not many. There's probably way more buyers than there are sellers. Yep. All right.
So that was a good investment.
That was a good investment, and he did not know that. And neither did I when I did not buy the one for $600 in 1980.
But one of the things that has this big spike in values in the last 2 or 3 years put them above water on that car. Because when they started that car, the selling price was probably $125,000.
That's right, and we thought we could fix it for $125 then too.
So it may be by accident that they're going to be above water on it.
Yeah.
So you have to keep that in mind. I don't foresee those prices going the other way, but who knows?
Yeah.
And it depends a lot on the world economy, not just ours. You know?
So if you decide you want to buy a car and you can't find one in the U.S., what do you always do now? You get on the internet and you start looking around, and you can find all kinds of cars for sale in Europe or anywhere around the world. It's really challenging. You know, if you find a car you like, you can get it here without too much problem, especially if you hire somebody like Eric, who can do all the paperwork and all the logistics and all that and get it over here. I personally don't want to get involved in any of that. It's too much paperwork. But if you do find something that you like, you have to be very careful. It's very easy to get taken because internet or computer pictures always look really sweet, and they're not. We've had a bunch of cars that come in that people bought sight unseen, and they ended up coming, they just were dog doo, you know, they weren't worth fixing. So if you can have somebody local look at the car, verify that it's good, a reputable shop or something like that, and then call somebody like Eric and have him get it over here, and he can get it right to your door if you want. You know, the other thing with the values of the cars going up, we're seeing more and more flippers. You know, you see those TV shows about flipping your house? Well, now they're flipping cars, and there's a 62 convertible, 72 convertible on the internet right now that I'm sure is a car that's just being flipped because it's got a 62 serial number and everything else on it. It's late model, and it's really a screwed up car. And they're asking $130,000 for it, and it's definitely not worth but 40, maybe something like that. Yeah, so you got to be very careful, know what you're getting, and the flippers, they're in it to make money. So you just need to make sure it's not a flipper, you know. Or I mean, it's not to say that there's not shops out there that are doing that to make money that aren't. They could be selling very nice cars, but you just need to do your homework.
Can I make a point? If you're looking at a car on the internet, make sure that they're listing the serial number, and they should actually have a picture of the serial number plate. And if you're unsure of it, contact Dave or Eric or somebody, or or just post an email on one of the Yahoo groups and ask questions, because people on there have, you know, I have a book that lists serial number ranges for every Model D ever made, and it can tell you, I can look up that serial number and say, this is what it was sold as. If it's being listed as something different, or if the pictures of it show equipment that it never had, that's a red flag. You just, you know, if you don't have the information yourself, contact somebody that can get it for you and can do the research on it. Yeah. Get in trouble.
You know, as the prices of the cars go up, it makes it easier for shops like us to stay in business too. So we enjoy that. Let's see. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the change in clientele that we see. Let me make sure I didn't go too far here. You know, with the new type of clientele that we have, often have problems that you wouldn't think would happen with a normal car. Back in the day when everybody was driving their car every day, stuff worked pretty much until it wore out. You know, you'd have a water pump wear out or something like that. But with the new clientele that we have, they drive the car once a month, maybe once every 6 months. When they go out to get in the car, half the stuff on the car doesn't work. Lights don't work, the battery's dead, there's puddles under it, often puddles under the car because they're not using the car and the seals, you know, get cold or dry or whatever, and they don't seal anymore and everything leaks out. And wonder why that happens. Well, the reason it happens is because they're not using the car. So of course, if it's an expensive car, you don't want to use it. So it's kind of a difficult, yeah, it's 22. You know, I know none of you guys out that have all these beautiful cars, you don't want them out in the rain like this. But you know, you're using it, so that's good. Let's see, we never have cars come in anymore for a tune-up, ever. You know, I think it's been 10 years since we did a tune-up. We'll do a tune-up when we're doing the restoration, but other than that, the car just doesn't come in. There's no water pumps that we change, nothing like that. In the old, you know, I know shops that fix regular cars, and they might work on 10 to 20 cars every day. We might work on 20 to 40 cars a year, and it's completely different. I don't know how they keep their head straight, but I kind of like the pace that we have to work on the cars, but it's definitely different than most repair shops. Another thing that's odd, nobody will pick up their car. When it's done, yep, yeah, it's done, okay. You know, 2 months go by, 3 months go by, next thing you know, it's 6 months, and then they pay us to store it over the winter. And then the next spring comes along, and they say, yep, I'm gonna pick it up, and they never show up. And next thing you know, the summer's gone, and we store it for another winter. That's happened 6 years in a row with one guy. And he says he's gonna have it at the Rendezvous this year, up in Saratoga.
Now the car needs $1,000 worth of work.
Every year, every year we get it out, we got to do stuff. You know, I think we've already changed the battery in it because it's sat with us so long. And every spring we get it out and drive it around, do all kinds of stuff to it. I send him a bill, he pays the bill, and then it sits there.
What kind of car is it?
This one.
CITROEN DS.
Call me up. We'll come and exercise.
Yeah.
You have one. You don't need another.
Yeah. So let me tell you about another type of customer that we have now. We got a guy about, I don't know, it's 4 or 5 years ago now that bought a car. He decided he's looking around on the internet. He wants to buy a CITROEN DS21. And because he's looking on the internet and doing his research, he figures out he wants to buy a fuel-injected DS because it's the fastest and the best and this and that and whatever. So he finally finds one to buy, and it's and he doesn't go to look at the car. It's not that far away, and obviously he's got enough money to just pay the money. He could have taken a plane there to look at it, but he doesn't. So he buys the car and ships it to us. And then, you know, we check it over and we do some things to the car. And, you know, next thing you know, like 3, 4, 5 months go by and he doesn't pick up the car. And so we store it for the next winter. So in the spring, he says, you know, I read on the internet, DSs are hot in the summer. So he has us put air conditioning on the car. He's still never driven this car or any Citroën DS in his life.
Awesome.
Never even sat in one to know how cushy the seats are. He read about it though. So it's really hard to put air conditioning on a fuel-injected DS. So $7,000 later, he has air conditioning, and this is after paying 24 grand for the car. So we get that, we get it all set, ready to go, and he goes, you know, I just don't think I can pick it up. So he doesn't come to pick it up, and then another winter goes by, and then, you know, this keeps going on and on for like 4 years. And finally, we talk him into picking the car up. And he's still never driven one, sat in one, or even gone to a show. And I said, well, you know, come on up, because we're out in the country. You can drive it around, get used to it. Nope, can't do it. So he pays another Citroën friend of ours to come up, pick the car up, and drive it to him. So the first time he ever sits in the car or drives it is in the Bronx, New York. Or Brooklyn, one of those. It doesn't matter. It's New York City. It's not a place to drive a car for the first time. And it's a Citromatic. No, it's stick shift. And he hasn't owned a car in 20 years. Because you don't need a car in New York City. This is the type of person that's getting into these cars. Now, it's not a bad thing. It's just different, you know.
No, it's a bad thing.
Maybe it is a bad thing. I don't know. You know, they pay us. We get paid for storing the car. We get paid for fixing the car over and over and over and over for stupid stuff that breaks that shouldn't break because they're not using the car. So I guess the moral of the story is you guys that drove them here in the rain, it's a beautiful thing. So,
He didn't wreck the car, did he?
what's that?
He didn't wreck the car, did he?
No, he actually been driving it a little bit, you know. So it's
Just had to ease himself into it.
kind of amazing. But that is definitely, that's not that weird. We see stuff like that more often now. So I mean, the people that are here are more old class diehards, you know. They're not the new people that are into these. Okay, so that was that. The you know, I'll just make a plea. If you can try to keep your car somewhat original, it's great. It's definitely worth more money. If we ever have to do an appraisal on a car, we're not an official appraisal place, but you know, often we have customers ask us to appraise their car so they can send it into their insurance company. The more original it is, it's worth more money. And if you look at all auction results, modified cars are never at the top of the list. It's always originality. So, you know, we're temporary caretakers for these cars. It'd be great to try to keep them original. But if you want modified cars, you want to go fast, we can do it. You know, we know how to do that. Oh, one last thing. There's hardly anybody getting into this business. I'm gonna be 59. Carter's in his 60s. I don't know of a person that's working on these cars right now that's not in their 50s. That's not a good thing. So, you know, I can see one really big blowout sale about 10 years from now. All these cars up for sale, and that's going to make all these prices tank.
I will be there.
Yeah.
Buddy here has been saying that for a few years. He's waiting for us all to kick.
Yep.
What it's going to do is it's going to make these cars
I
go
won't
back
need
to
to.
Europe.
It's so cheap. I'll drive.
Because the market is still going to be in Europe. So,
Right.
so it's going to affect the market here, but it's not necessarily going to affect the market worldwide.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're going to lose everything overnight.
No, no. You know, that's just kind of a joke, but I'm in pretty good health so far.
Do you have any tech schools near you where you can go teach classes?
I don't know. You know, over the years, I've hired, I think, 5 or 6 different people that came to work for me. And Citroëns are so different. I mean, one guy was an Audi mechanic, and he fixed Audis. He could fix Audi V8s, which were very technical cars, no problem. He came to work for me, and it was a year before I made a penny off of him. You know, so the training for a person that is already a mechanic is pretty long for Citroëns. You know, they're different in a lot of different ways. So it's just challenging to train people. You know, I was real lucky when Carter came along because he knew what he was doing. So that's not going to happen again, I don't think. So.
What happened to that mechanic?
You know, he just finally decided he wanted to start his own business, and actually, and he had a bad back, so he couldn't do a lot of the work anymore. And then my other helper, Rob, he started his own business, and we actually subbed some stuff out to him now, some rust repair, because I don't want to do that, so I can stay alive a little longer. So, I think that's about it. I want to really thank Gabrielle for helping me out on this, and Carter helped too. Any questions?
Does anyone have an estimate of how many Citroëns are coming in to the States on a yearly basis? A vague idea?
Eric might know better than that because he's at the port every 3 days, right?
A couple of them. A couple hundred a year. Really?
How many leaving?
And I ship them the other way as well.
Hey, I had a question over here.
We're mixing that fuel up this year. We got the P&S.
Well, that's an interesting part. He asked if we had to reverse engineer this. I had a new old stock one of these, and we made a silicone mold. I have a friend that's in the mold business. We made a silicone mold, which you can get high quality reproduction parts on. Nowadays, you'd probably take this and scan it and then do a 3D printer or something like that. It's probably way cheaper now to make this than it was back then. But that's like 8-10 years ago we made those, and that was done old school. So as you know, technology goes forward, prices often come down. Any other questions?
What is that for? What's its function?
It goes on the dashboard. Steering column goes through there, and the shifter's right here. Yep. And if your car's in the sun, this will warp and crack. So keep your car out of the sun.
So it was worth doing the mold for that.
Yeah, in fact, we sold a bunch of them to Europe because nobody was making them in Europe. But still, I think we sold 20 of them total. I'm not going to retire on that, you know.
In 1955,
Which is a good thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep, keep me working my ass off. That's it.
probably more plastic in the 1955 DS than in every other make of car combined at the time.
That's a perfect example of one of the early pieces of plastic that Citroën used, and they were in the front of the field with a lot of the technology, and plastic was one of them. And the nylon cooling fans, nobody had anything like that back in the 50s.
Anything else? Maybe, Brad, you doing your thing now? Or gonna take a break?
I'll talk a little bit and we'll take a break. I'd like to know for next year, and possibly even I'm looking at how many copies of that parts quiz we have, and I'm thinking that maybe it should go to the rendezvous with me and see what kind of it. Do you guys like that? Do you not like it? Is it worth doing? I think we just about stumped everybody. I think Dave had the best score. That's what I understand. Rose can tell us about that, but is it something you guys like to do? Is it a diversion?
We just need to see more A series parts.
All right, well then somebody's got to give me some.
I will donate some.
There you go.
Yes, just email me, let me know.
All right, well it's 1:47. We'll take a little bit of a break. There's actually, we'd have to take the screen down to get it, but there's ice water in there. I'm sure there's snacks on the table. It doesn't look like the weather is very conducive to going for a walk, but if anybody needs a bathroom break or anything, go for it, and around 2 o'clock we'll start the next seminar.